So they have both male and female sexual organs because they don't die and they never age. They could communicate with people on different planets. And back then, we didn't have a moon. We should not commit suicide because it's a waste of time. It's just like a breach of contract because once you enter in the embryo, you already signed a contract for life.
Welcome everyone to our Sliver of Time. Today we have what I believe is going to be a fantastic episode with Samuel Chong. We're talking reincarnation, we're talking afterlife, ancient civilizations, ETs, the whole nine yards. It's going to be a fantastic conversation. First and foremost, Samuel, thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having me here.
I suppose a good starting point is you helped arrange a translation, a Chinese translation of the book, the Thiaoouba Prophecy. This book was written by Michel Desmarquet. How is it that you got involved with this person? My understanding is that you read the book and like seeked him out.
Yes, because I was fascinated by the content of the book. I couldn't put the book down because everything to me written in the book is true. And in the postscript, it says there are far more incredible things that Michel Desmarquet wasn't allowed to write in the book. I was very curious about what that is. So I decided to seek him out, track him down, and I did. I flew to Vietnam and brought me a picture of his bungalow that I found on the internet and I showed it to the taxi driver. And the taxi driver just found where he was living just from a picture of the bungalow. And there I met him and he wasn't very happy to see me.
So let me just get this straight. You fly all the way to Vietnam. You were in LA at the time?
Yes, I was in LA, yes.
Okay. And he had no idea you were coming and you went off of a photo. Like,
Yes.
how confident were you that you were going to find this guy?
No confidence at all because I didn't know his exact address. I thought at that time that if I couldn't find him, if I couldn't locate him, I would just maybe have a 5-day vacation or holiday in Vietnam. And that's what I was thinking at that time.
Just to kind of get straight into it, right? You know, we have plenty of time. I want to hit this like from front to back because it's such a fascinating story. But being that we are a near-death experience channel, they all want to know what happens when we die, in your opinion.
Well, according to the book, we have our physical body as a tool to learn spiritual lessons. So when we die, we give up the physical body. Our astral body leaves the physical body. The astral body is actually composed of electrons, and 81% of electrons goes into the higher self after 3 days. And this is why Christ resurrected after 3 days. And this is why the Tibetan culture doesn't allow people to touch the corpse of the dead for 3 days. And then the other 19% of electrons remain in nature until they're recycled or until a person reincarnates. So this is why some people see ghosts. So ghosts are actually the 19% of the remaining electrons of the astral body. Because of the static forces of the electrons, ghosts resemble the appearance of the person who was alive. And because the electrons also contain memories, this is why ghosts frequently haunt the places they loved or hated. So what happens is that when the astral body rejoins the higher self, there is actually a life reveal process. So it's like a holographic film in which everything that happened in the past life will be shown to you. You're able to feel how you and everyone else felt when you did certain things to others. For example, if I hit a person, I would be able to feel the pain and sufferings of that person that I hit. So it's like an omnipotent experience in a holographic film, showing everything happened from the birth to the event that you die. Our higher self would sometimes allow us to come back to this world if there are reasons to do so. For example, if you want to care for your living parents, if you want to care for your children, sometimes they're allowed for you to come back to Earth. Not for your reasons, but for the purpose of others. So once you review how you did in your lifetime, in your past life, you're going to decide what kind of spiritual lessons you're going to learn in the next life. And then you choose the family that you want to be born with. And then everything is erased from your memory again. and then you go into the embryo of the mother that you decided or you chose, and then things start over again. So that's the whole cycle.
So what you're saying kind of implies, past lives, reincarnation, etc. My understanding, obviously having done the research for this interview, these type of things are woven into the whole story. So don't let me tell it for you. Let's start from the beginning, right? Michel was taken to a golden planet. What was this situation? How did this all begin?
It started in 1987 when he suddenly woke up in the middle of the night. He didn't know why, but he wrote a note to his wife saying that he would be gone for 10 days and there's absolutely no need to worry about him. So he walked outside of his house. He was lifted up to the middle of the air where he saw like a very beautiful, tall, 9 or 10 foot tall, sexy looking ET who said to him that they were going to begin a journey together to their planet, Thiaoouba, for 9 days and then come back. They began the journey. They went through a parallel universe. It's actually like a portal or warp. But they used the parallel universe as a hiding place so that Michelle's neighbors wouldn't be able to see them. So they began their journey traveling at a few times faster than the speed of light, going through process what Michel would call transubstantiation, or what I would call teleportation in deep space. So they arrived at their planet called the Golden Planet because Michel saw like a golden mist surrounding the planet. It's very beautiful and very, very colorful as well. After he arrived, he had to wear like masks, like sunglasses, filtering out all the colors, all the bright colors. Otherwise, he would have been drunken by the colors. And then he saw that the people were so compassionate and loving, and they can perform all the miracles as performed by Christ. So they communicated to him through telepathy. They can materialize objects. They can levitate. They can disappear at their will. And they have a lot of the knowledge that can be very helpful to us, such as where we all came from originally and what's the purpose of life, what happens to the ancient civilizations, and what about the stories in the Bible, like who destroyed the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, who helped Moses to part the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea, but the Sea of Reeds, who gave the manna to the Hebrews to eat so that they could survive during the Exodus process, and who actually was responsible for the birth of Jesus and Christ. And so that's is very interesting. And there are a lot of specific verifiable facts contained in the book that I was able to verify and validate and do further investigations. For example, the book mentions there's a tomb of Jesus in Japan. A lot of people don't know about this. I was very hesitant to believe that too. I was skeptical about it, but I searched online, and indeed, there's a tomb of Jesus in Japan. And the book connects all the dots why some people say that Jesus went to India, and why there's a tomb of Jesus in Japan, and why Christ was able to perform all the miracles all of a sudden after he began preaching. So the book explains everything. It's very interesting.
Do you have any description, what these people looked like?
Yes, they're Caucasians. They are blonde. They're tall, 9 or 10 foot tall. They're always looking like in their 30s because they don't die and they never age. They can regenerate their body tissues and cells. And they can communicate through words, but also through telepathy. And they are omnipotent beings with great knowledge and compassion and love. And Michel actually didn't want to come back after he lived there for 9 days. And after he came back unwillingly, he was actually looking forward for them to take him back to the Thiaoouba because the golden planet appears to him just like a paradise. And the Thiaoubans, they perform all the miracles as performed by Christ. That's the thing that really intriguing. According to this book, Christ was actually one of them.
My understanding is that he described them as being like a blend of both male and female. Does he have any idea of like what the function of that is, what the purpose would be? And I suppose as a second question, do you think there's any correlation between like what we're seeing in human beings right now?
Well, they are hermaphrodites, so they have both male and female sexual organs. Michel said that because they told him, and also he was able to verify that when they were naked on the beach. So he did see their breasts and also their male genitals. They say that they're so advanced to the point that they don't need to rely on a partner to regenerate. They can actually regenerate or give birth on their own thought or will, having both a male and female sexual organ, and they can have sexual pleasures at their own will, so they don't have to rely on finding a partner to do that. This is because they're so highly advanced, they don't have to be troubled with the male and female sexual relationship or the emotional relationships. I don't think it has any connection to what we are seeing right now on Earth, having transgender people. I think those are probably caused by some of the hormonal effects or maybe some of the other effects that we are not aware of. And I do think that the book emphasizes the importance of following nature. The creator created people on Earth, and they actually made both male and female genders. And at the same time, the book said that we should not condemn transgenders or homosexuals. We should respect them because they're all beings created by the creator. So we should respect all the people on Earth. They all have their own free will, and we should keep that in mind.
Would you say that there was a way of life that was observed, like their purpose for living versus ours? Was there any comparison there?
Yes, very good question. Because according to the book, when the creator created the entire universe, they made different categories of planets into 9 categories. So we are currently living on category 1 planet on Earth, which is the lowest category. We are just like elementary school students learning the basics, and they are living on category 9 planet, the highest category. But they can also rejoin the Great Spirit, the creator of the universe. So that's actually what they do when they disappear out of a sudden. They have a hard time keeping their bodies in physical form. So when Michel was on their planet, Thiaoouba, he met the 7 masters of the planet. And he described them as having a difficult time keeping them in front of him because they just disappear like out of a sudden and reappear. When they disappear, they join the great spirit of the creator of the universe. So their role is actually to guide us, just like parents to children, university professor to students, like to guide us sometimes directly and sometimes indirectly, so that we know the reason why we are here on Earth, which is to learn spiritual lessons. They sometimes helped us and sometimes punished us.
Why do you think they chose him? Is there any certain like qualities or characteristics that factor in, or is it at random?
Well, they chose him for 3 reasons, according to what I discovered. First, that he is a man of action. When I met him, I discovered that he took actions immediately. The second time I met him, he told me the one thing he wasn't allowed to write in the book within 5 minutes after I met him. So he was afraid of something might happen after 5 minutes. So he took actions right at the second I met him. The main reason is actually because he had 80 past lives. According to the book, only people like him, like having 80 past lives already, are able to survive for 9 days on the planet. It's probably because of the vibrations or for some other reasons, but they chose him for that specific reason. And the third reason is probably because he was just a landscaper in Australia. He didn't have a lot of education, so he didn't have a lot of preconceived notions or agendas of ET, extraterrestrials, or alien life. So if they were to take like a physicist or maybe like a ufologist, they wouldn't know if they would just write accurately without any prejudice. So they chose Michel because he was just like a blank piece of paper to write on. And according to Michel the author, they did choose other people as well. For example, after Michel came back, he read the book of Enoch, and immediately he knew that Enoch was actually taken by the same group of ETs. In the Old Testament of the Bible, it says Enoch went away with gods or Jehovah's, and Michel believed that Enoch was actually taken by the Thiaoubans or Jehovah's to their planet, and then was also instructed to write the book of Enoch. So this is why we sometimes are able to read the descriptions in the book of Enoch. But you have to remember what happens a few decades later to the great grandson of Enoch, which is Noah. He was told to build an ark. We have to take the warnings of ETs very seriously.
You mentioned that he had 80 past lives. Did he go into detail about any of these memories of past lives?
Yes, it's in the book. He described what who he was in his 80 past lives. He visited his past lives with the assistance of the ETs, because the ETs took his astral body and then showed him how things went with his past lives. For example, once he was a German miner, like mining worker, who accidentally killed his wife, leaving a lot of children behind. A few times he was a beggar on street, and once he was a goldsmith in Japan, water carrier in India, a boy in Africa was eaten alive by an animal, a wild animal. He was also a queen ruling an entire country on a different planet. So according to the ETs, his past lives were just like different positions on a wheel. What goes up has to come down. So he actually had to experience different roles in his past lives in order to learn different spiritual lessons. So in a way, they're saying that we don't need to be jealous of the lives of the super wealthy, because they have their own lessons to learn, their own spiritual lessons to learn, probably the temptation of money, wealth, or women, or opposite sex. We have our own spiritual lessons to learn, and this is why we have challenges in life. The most important thing is how we respond to our challenges while learning the spiritual lessons. We should not commit suicide because it's a waste of time. It's just like a breach of contract, because once you enter in the embryo, you already signed a contract for life to learn specific spiritual lessons. If you commit suicide midway, then you are breaching the contract. You have to relearn the lessons that you're supposed to learn.
You mentioned that he had one of his previous lives, he was a queen on another planet. So if you're talking reincarnation, not just on Earth, do you believe it's across different species as well?
Not really. Only human beings on Earth and on different planets, because when God, the Creator, created every one of us, it actually inserted a tiny portion of itself to each of our astral bodies. So we are part of the Creator, and the Creator is part of us. So we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, and also physical beings having a spiritual experience. So when God created human beings, they made human beings special because we are part of the Creator as well. But animals, they don't have the sparkles of divinity. They don't have the part of the Creator. We have 9 different bodies, with the physical body being one of the 9. But animals only have like 3 bodies. Physical bodies is one of the 3. So this is why we are more advanced than the animals. Or most animals. When we reincarnate into human beings on Earth, on different planets. But having said that, remember I mentioned that 19% of electrons remain in nature until they are recycled by nature, or when one reincarnates. Sometimes when the 19% of electrons remain in nature, they kind of, the book implies that they sometimes are influenced by electrons from other entities, like animals or plants. So sometimes this is why people tend to have characteristics of an animal or memories of a plant.
If humans only reincarnate into other humans, right? Just out of curiosity, so then what happens when a species goes extinct? Where do they go in that case?
Well, when the creator created everything in the universe, it started out with four different forces. It created using the first force, the atomic force, creating everything that doesn't move, like the stars, the planets, the soil, the rocks. And then it used the second force to create plants. And those are the more advanced than the rocks and soil. And then it used the third force to create animals and human beings, the fleshy part. And then use the fourth force, which is a spiritual force, to add on to their human beings. So when animals die, they have their own like electrons or astral bodies. So they tend to remain in that realm. They kind of reincarnate into other animals.
In regards to the ancient civilizations, was there anything said about people wonder how were the pyramids built? I mean, people with, far more rudimentary, abilities. How did the pyramids get built?
So the Great Pyramid of Egypt was actually built by a very wise and learned person originally from Atlantis, 17,000 years ago, when Atlantis was still a continent in the Atlantic Ocean. So that thought, what some people now would consider to be the Egyptian god, was actually a regular person. He just had great knowledge. So he was able to use anti-gravitational technologies and ultrasonic laboratory systems to cut the huge stones in a very precise manner. And because he had the knowledge, he was able to align the stones in perfectly so that the pyramid was actually used as an energy center to capture cosmic and terrestrial energies, so that the users of the pyramid, such as the ancient pharaohs, sat in the middle of the pyramid, like the king's chamber, meditating and then concentrating and projecting their thoughts into the top of the pyramid and then towards the other planets of the universe so that they could communicate with people on different planets. So it's actually like an energy center. And also they use the pyramid to make rain. And I found that to be very interesting because University of Reading of the UK had an experiment in which they projected what they would call the Oregon energy into the sky so that clouds would form and rain would fall. So they used the pyramid in the past the same way, using a metal plate made of silver and other metal alloy and to project energies into the sky so that rain would fall.
You had mentioned on a previous interview that different races of humans came from different planets. Do you mind elaborating on this?
Sure. Originally, 1.35 million years ago, the blacks and the yellows came from a planet called Baccaratini. And then they were looking to find a more vibrant planet to move to because their planet was dying because the core of the planet was cooling down. So when the core of a planet cools down, it loses the ability to capture the atmosphere because it doesn't have the electromagnetic force anymore. So they were looking to find a newer planet to live on of the same category. So they saw Mars in our solar system. Mars at that time had life or human beings that lived on Mars, but they didn't have a lot of natural resources. And also Mars was cooling down as well. So they kept going and they saw Earth and they decided that Earth was a very good planet to move their people to. So this is what they did. So they moved their people and the blacks and the yellows began living on Earth. So the blacks first started living in Australia. So this is why some people see that the aboriginals of Australians were like black people. And afterwards, a section that broke apart from that population went to Africa. So this is where the majority of the black population is. 1.32 million years ago, there was an asteroid that hit Earth after being split into three parts. Earth change in which almost the entire civilization, the black and yellow civilization, got wiped out. So that's the first great reset. And then afterwards, so people had to start over again, establishing a newer civilization that was more primitive than the ones before the Great Reset. And about 250,000 years ago, another group of people came from Arimo X3, which had a very highly sophisticated civilization. They landed on the continent of Lemuria in the Pacific Ocean. They are actually the ancestors of the Polynesians nowadays, and sometimes the Native Americans. They had a lot of technologies, such as the technologies to build the Great Pyramid. But unfortunately, 14,500 years ago, the entire continent sunk into the ocean. And because they kept their technology secret, other people like the Chinese, the blacks, and the yellows and the blacks, they didn't learn the technologies from the people on Lemuria. And also because there was another group of people, the Caucasians, who lived on the continent of Atlantis, that learned their technologies. So the Atlantic people from Atlantis, like Thoth, was able to build the Great Pyramid of Egypt. But after the disappearance of Atlantis, there was another great reset, especially after the burning of the library of Alexandria in Egypt. A lot of the great knowledge was lost. So I would say that's the second great reset. So we have to start over again. But the Hebrews originally came from a different planet called Hebra about 12,000 years ago. And the story tells why the Hebrews were the chosen people according to the Bible, and explains why the Thebans selected Hebrews to make example of how we should develop our spirituality. But unfortunately, things didn't go as planned.
Do you think there's any correlation between the dinosaurs getting wiped out so suddenly and then allegedly all these people coming in from other planets, or do you think those are two separate things?
Michel was actually asked this question, how the dinosaurs went extinct. And he was told that the dinosaurs went extinct because of natural disasters. So they were living on Earth way before humans landed on Earth. And back then, we didn't have a moon. And the moon was actually captured later. The dinosaurs went extinct because the asteroid hit Earth. But human beings weren't on Earth yet, so that didn't really matter to us. But those two were separate events.
You mentioned the importance of, different colors and the effects that they could have on living beings. I don't know if you're referencing the auras, that some people claim to see auras. My understanding is that you were actually working on a camera that could see the auras, which is super fascinating. But what is the role that colors play in general?
We do have our auric fields or human energy fields that affect our physical body. And the colors actually are different vibrations that would affect our auric fields or human energy fields. Aura readers can foretell or predict what kind of physical illness you're going to have in the future. And they're also able to tell whether a person is sincere or if a person is lying on stage. So if we have an aura camera, just like a regular camera, and we can just see whether a politician candidate is more sincere or is lying on stage, so we can make better choices. So that's the thing I've been trying to develop, but I have encountered a lot of challenges and difficulties because a lot of aura readers see different colors of the same person or from the same photo. So I have to find consistent data in order to develop something that's more scientifically based.
Has there ever been a point where the ETs have intervened with humanity?
Yes, many times in the past. A lot of the interventions were recorded by the Bible. For example, they were responsible for the destruction of the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, for a very good reason, because I have to explain this, and people have to read the Hebrew text. There was a story of a young girl who helped a beggar on the street by giving him money, food to eat, but the people in Sodom and Gomorrah, they tortured the girl to death because the girl helped the beggar on the street. So they tortured and killed and punished the compassionate people. And the Thebans didn't want them to affect people who were in contact with them. So they destroyed the two cities. It's just like having malignant tumors on your body. To prevent them from spreading to the rest of your body, you have to take them out by having a surgery or surgical removal. So that's one of the interventions they had. They also helped Moses to part the Sea of Reeds. The Ten Commandments was actually a conversation between the Thebans to Moses that was recorded later. And they actually put the embryo of Jesus into the uterus of Virgin Mary just to show people that someone extraordinary was going to be born this way. And also to fulfill the prophecies. He couldn't perform miracles because when the embryo goes in, when the astral body goes into the embryo, it has to pass through what the ancient Nagas would call the river of oblivion, forgetting the knowledge to perform miracles. And he went to India and died in Japan. And so there's a tomb of Jesus in Japan. And Christ was actually an ET from Thiaoouba who actually went into the body made by the Thebans that resembled the body of Jesus so that he could perform miracles because he remembered everything. And Christ resurrected 3 days after just to show people that there's life after death and there's reincarnation. And the book is so specific, it named 4 different Catholic Church Council meetings that intentionally distorted the original meanings of the ancient scriptures from the Bible. So we all know that the concept of reincarnation was removed by the Catholic Church Council meetings. The most recent intervention that I can think of is they prevented Germany from being the first country to develop the atomic bomb. So World War II was able to be ended much earlier, so less casualties. So that's very interesting because I did some research. There was a German scientist called Dr. Heisenberg, who was far more advanced than the American scientist in developing the atomic bomb. But for some reason, he wrote a report that was read by Hitler, saying that Germany at that time didn't have the resources to make the bomb. So that's why Hitler gave up the plan. So the American scientists were able to develop the bomb much earlier and ending the war much earlier. So at that time, the ETs sided with the American government because they believed that at that time, the Americans were more sincere in ensuring individual liberties than the Germans.
Do you fear death at all?
I don't fear death at all because I know that I have a life mission here to do the best I can to wake as many people up as possible, along with people like you, people like others. And it's going to be an international effort. It's not just Americans, not just Indians, not just Africans, but the entire world, because what we are up to is actually a group of financiers, an international organization that is transnational, that's making us living in a harsher environment. They are creating conflicts, but I think it's really up to us to really do something against it. So I have no fear of death.
Do you think that the average person has, extra sensory abilities that we're just not aware of?
Yes, I do think that everyone has certain psychic abilities, and sometimes it shows up or manifests as gut feelings or intuition. And there are ways to increase the psychic abilities. And one of the ways is actually mentioned in the book is through meditation and concentration. Those two are different. Meditation is just to quiet your mind down and to really think of nothing. And then you just make your brainwave into a state in which you can really have actual senses. And then when that happens, you can concentrate into what you like to achieve. And that will happen. And it takes practice, and you have to be in a very quiet environment or into the woods to do it. In a noisy environment, or maybe when you have a lot of interferences, artificial interferences, then you probably are going to get distracted.
If you could ask one question to the person watching this video right now, what would it be?
What would you think that's the most important sentence in the Bible?
You believe most of the stories in the Bible, or all of them?
Some stories in the Bible. And actually, the most important, I can answer my question that asked, which is the kingdom of God is within you. So that is when you have challenges, when you have difficulties in life, look inside for answers, not to follow a specific religious leader or politician or the mainstream media. Because when the Creator created every one of us, it inserted a tiny portion of itself to each of our astral bodies. So we all have a sparkling of divinity. So look inside for answers.